This episode of the Endpoints of View podcast is brought to you by SentryBay, home of the armored client, the world's most advanced endpoint protection. Hey there, ready to dig into some cybersecurity? Because today we're talking about something that's probably on everyone's mind these days, especially with so many people working remotely. How do we make sure all that sensitive company data stays, actually sensitive?
Right, yeah.
So we're diving into this partnership I saw announced. It really gets at the heart of why securing data in the cloud is such a challenge now.
Huh.
It's SentryBay. They specialize in endpoint security, and they've joined forces with TD SYNNEX, who are a really big IT distributor.
Huge, yeah.
But before we get into the partnership itself, maybe we could back up a second.
Sure.
You've probably heard of Microsoft AVD and W365, right? They're like those virtual workplaces in the cloud. They let you access work stuff from anywhere, which is really convenient, but
Yeah, it's a game changer, but
it really changes how you have to think about security, right?
yeah.
Because instead of protecting a physical office, it's like every employee's laptop is now like its own little branch of the company that needs its own security.
Yeah, and that's where the old school way of doing security starts to fall apart. See, those old systems were all about building walls, firewalls, intrusion detection, all that. They were made for when the biggest threats were from someone outside trying to break into your network.
Right.
But in a cloud environment, like with AVD or W365, the data's all over the place. People are accessing it from different devices constantly, and that perimeter, the line between inside and outside, it's way more open.
It's like switching from guarding a fortress to trying to protect a whole village that's spread out over miles. So let's talk about those threats then. What are we talking about specifically when we say cloud environments are vulnerable?
Right.
I mean, we've all heard of things like keyloggers, but what's the real danger?
Well, keyloggers are a perfect example, and they're a lot sneakier than people realize.
Yeah.
Imagine a program that's totally invisible to you. It's recording every single keystroke you make.
Oh, no.
Passwords, credit card numbers, private messages, you name it, all of that, getting sent straight to some cyber criminal.
Ugh, it's like a digital stalker looking over your shoulder 24/7. I can see why companies would be freaking out.
Yeah, and it's not just keyloggers. There's screen capture malware, which basically takes screenshots of your desktop without you knowing. And then there's the really bad stuff, malicious process injection. That's where hackers take over programs that are already on your device, but they use them to steal your data, making it look like totally normal activity.
So even if your device seems fine, someone could be stealing everything.
Exactly.
So companies have to make a choice between the benefits of the cloud and all this risk.
It's a tough spot to be in.
So where does SentryBay come in with their armored client? I'm really curious to hear how they're approaching this differently.
Right, and that's what makes SentryBay so interesting. They've kind of flipped the script on how we think about security.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to block every single threat out there, which is impossible, right?
Right.
They said, what if we just create a secure space for your data?
Okay, so instead of guarding that whole village we were talking about, they're saying let's just build one super secure bank vault in the middle of town and keep all the important stuff in there.
You got it. That's the armored client.
Yeah.
It basically takes your data session, but that's like that virtual space where you're actually using your apps and data in the cloud, and it isolates it.
Isolates it.
From the rest of your device in the network. So even if your device is compromised, those keyloggers, those screen grabbers, whatever else, they hit a wall, they can't actually get into the armored client to reach the data.
So it's like the data has its own invisibility cloak. No matter what's happening on the device itself, the data's protected.
That's a really good way to put it. And here's what's even cooler. Armored client doesn't actually try to recognize specific threats. It's not playing catch-up with every new malware out there. It's about creating this impenetrable barrier around the data itself.
Wow, so you're protected even from things they haven't even figured out how to do yet.
Exactly.
That's got to be a load off someone's mind. But let's talk about TD SYNNEX for a minute. Why is this partnership such a big deal? I mean, SentryBay seems like they have things pretty well handled.
Well, they do, but even the best lock in the world doesn't mean much if it's sitting on a shelf in a store somewhere, right? That's where TD SYNNEX is huge.
Okay.
They're like the delivery system for cybersecurity solutions.
Yeah.
They have this massive network of resellers, especially in the US and Canada.
Yeah.
And these resellers, they're the ones on the front lines, helping businesses find the right security tools.
So TD SYNNEX is like a cybersecurity matchmaker then. They connect businesses with the solutions they need.
Exactly. And their reach is incredible. They work with all these managed service providers who are basically like the IT departments for tons of companies, especially those small to mid-sized businesses. So now SentryBay's armored client is going to be right there in the mix when those providers are talking to their clients about what they need.
It's like going from a small shop to being featured in every big box store across the country. You're reaching a way bigger audience.
Absolutely.
But zooming out a little, what does this say about where cybersecurity is going in general?
To me, it says that security is becoming more about being proactive. It's not just about reacting to threats anymore. It's about protecting that data no matter where it is.
So like instead of just locking down the castle, you're giving every single person inside their own suit of armor.
Yeah. And that's so important now because, like we've been saying, the way people are working, it's changing so fast. Cloud computing, remote work.
Right.
That attack surface is huge.
Right.
And this partnership, they're not just focused on the U.S. and Canada either. They want to take this global Europe, Asia. That just shows you how big of a deal this is.
Yeah.
It's not just for big companies anymore. Any business, any person working with sensitive stuff online needs to be thinking about this.
It's true. It doesn't matter how secure your office is if just one person's laptop gets compromised.
Exactly.
It seems like focusing on the data itself, like making sure that's protected no matter what, that's got to be the way to go. It makes you wonder, how long are we even going to be calling it cybersecurity? It's becoming just security built into everything.
It's a whole different way of thinking about it for sure. And this partnership with SentryBay and TD SYNNEX, it's like a perfect example of how the industry is starting to adapt to that.
Totally. Well, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for walking us through all of this.
Happy to be here.
For our listeners, if you want to learn more about SentryBay and TD SYNNEX and what they're working on, you can find links to both of them in our show notes. And here's something to think about as all this develops, as we see this big push towards endpoint security. What's your role going to be in protecting your own data? It's a question we should all be asking ourselves. Until next time, stay curious. This episode of the Endpoints of View podcast has been brought to you by SentryBay, home of the Armored Client, the world's most advanced endpoint protection. For more information, visit sentrybay.com.